On April the 14th, 1912, the world would be changed forever. The greatest ship of its time and man's monument to technological achievement, the Royal Mail steamer Titanic, would sail into the lexicon of history. No other historical event would inspire so many books and films. What you are about to see is an early black and white film produced in Great Britain in 1929. This film, which has been digitally remastered, was produced just 17 years after the disaster, and it offers a rare and fascinating point of view.
You ain't heard nothing yet. At least I hope you haven't. I almost forgot about the first Titanic movie with dialogue. For a while I wasn't sure if it was a Titanic movie. But it is, with a twist. So it's 1929 and talkies have been the rage of Hollywood and filmmakers in general for the last 2 years, and everyone wants to start making a movie with dialogue in it now. And actors who have thus far been limited to stage work are now flocking over to studios the world over in order to start a new branch of their careers. This new boom allowed for plays and musicals to suddenly be brought onto the screen for a wider audience. One such play was The Burg by Ernest Raymond. It was made in 1929, showed in the West End, and it was made into a film the same year in 1929. Knowing it was based on a play explains everything in this film. The acting, the sets, the movements. A bulk of the story takes place in the first-class lounge, which has many characters coming and going through numerous spots on either side of the room. The set could be made bigger than a rudimentary stage, and rather than have characters explaining what's happening outside, the audience can see the mounting chaos. Oddly enough, in the film, they show what happens, including the fights breaking out and the officers shooting, and yet they have characters come in and explain what happened anyway. It was early days. What's the story of Atlantic about anyway? And why is it called Atlantic, not Titanic? They weren't allowed to call it the Titanic. The White Star Line wouldn't let them. Think about how the world sees Titanic at that point. The majority of the survivors were still alive. J. Bruce Ismay was still living in shame as a recluse. Making a film about Titanic was widely seen as distasteful, and it's probably why no one remembers this film. Odd they called it Atlantic, though. Didn't they know about the SS Atlantic? The other big White Star Line disaster where all the women died? This movie is anachronism galore, more so than a character with a backpack from World War I. Everyone in this film is dressed as if the ship is sinking in the current year. It's all short hair and flapper dresses. You can tell this film wasn't made by Americans with all the alcohol featured in it, though. The story of the Atlantic was hard to understand. The film has literally and figuratively not aged well. The sound mixing is incredibly deteriorated, so you can only hope to know what these people are saying. If you think there's something up with the cinematography, it's because this is a black and white movie that's been coloured in. Badly. I've never seen a movie that has been coloured in because I'm not a snob and I'm okay with watching black and white movies, but I'm not sure it's this bad with a regular coloured in movie. Although, funny story, I do remember this one time when I was in senior year of high school, basically last year before I went on to university, and our English literature coursework was about the theme of the outsider. We had 2 set texts, plus one of our choosing to explore this theme in an essay. Oh my god, I just slashed my finger open. Maybe I should put down my sewing scissors when I'm doing these recordings, but I just needed something to hold. I'm not bleeding, it's okay. Anyway, I chose Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier because I really like the Hitchcock movie, and a fellow classmate asked me what it was about, and I teased the plot of the movie so that she might go and watch it, because at that point Rebecca was free to watch on YouTube, and I still think it is. I'm not sure, I'm just going to have to check that. When she asked if it was a black and white movie, she immediately lost interest. I mean, how can someone be so dismissive and ageist against a movie just because it's not in colour? Sometimes a black and white movie really does work in the film's favour. You have all of those noirs. And Psycho would definitely not be the same if it was coloured in. We know this because of the remake. There was this movement in the 1980s where Ted Turner wanted to colour in black and white movies, and it was heavily criticised by Star Wars creator George Lucas, who asserted that colouring in black and white movies was destroying film heritage. Honestly, I know that sounds hypocritical of him considering all the changes he made to the original trilogy, although it can be argued that some of the changes allowed the world of Star Wars to feel larger and more lived in. But seeing this film, and the terrible job of colouring it in, I understand what he meant now. This colouring looks horrendous. Why can't I just watch it in black and white like a normal person? Ugh, you know what? I'm going to put it into black and white right now. I can't stand it any longer. Oh, that's better. Right, we were talking about story, weren't we? Okay, so there's this guy who's having an affair and his wife finds out. That's meant to be the story. Before the iceberg. But he's not exactly the main character. The closest we have to that is John Rule, a wheelchair-bound man who is remarkably sensible and wise. As the danger escalates, he calmly tells people to get their families to safety, and even takes death on the chin when he cannot make it onto a lifeboat. His wife refuses to leave them and they go down together. I guess that's another thing I've noticed from these numerous Titanic adaptations. There's almost always an older couple willing to go down together. If it's not the Strausses, then it's a near equivalent. Oh yeah, the real people. How were they portrayed? Honestly, the story was so hard to understand without trying to discern the dialogue of the historical counterparts. You have officers shooting passengers, which you should never ever feature, and sometimes cut to the wireless room, which floods increasingly. You have other officers on the bridge, but that's pretty much it. It took so many attempts to watch this because it was so boring and the pacing was so bad. It's actually much easier to watch this when you dial it up to 1.25 speed, because all of those awkward pauses between dialogue is shortened. Here's a clip at the recommended speed.
Rumour? What rumour? That we're in the neighbourhood of icebergs? You know, I wonder who sets these rumours afloat.
But is it really true? You're dodging.
I hope it is. I've never seen a cruising iceberg.
Oh, you wouldn't see one tonight, even if there were any about.
Why not? It's the clearest night I've ever seen, and the ocean like a mirror.
Ah, that's just the reason, this flat calm. Usually, on the calmest nights in the Atlantic, there's a swell. And you can't see a growler unless there's a swell.
A growler? What the deuce is a growler?
Well, a growler is a large berg whose part above water is mostly melted.
And here it is again at the regular speed.
That we're in the neighbourhood of icebergs?
Pause!
You know,
Pause!
I wonder who sets these rumours afloat.
But is it really true?
Pause!
You're dodging.
Pause!
I hope it is. I've never seen a cruising iceberg.
Oh, you wouldn't see one tonight, even if there were any about.
Pause!
Why not? It's the clearest night I've ever seen, and the ocean like a mirror.
Ah, that's just the reason, this flat calm.
Pause!
Usually,
Pause!
on the calmest nights in the Atlantic, there's a swell.
Pause!
And you can't see a growler unless there's a swell.
A growler?
Pause!
What the deuce is a growler?
Well,
Pause! Pause!
a growler is a large berg whose part above water is mostly melted.
Pause!
Honestly, I'm not joking, these scenes are bloody horrendous at times, so I'm just going to play around with it.
Oh. What? Well, oh. What is it, Sebastian? I'm arranging matches. Well, I thought I'd better go. Yes, I think you'd better have. Ooh. And you can't eat popcorn to that. You're going... Whereas if the film did any little bit of business in America, as like if the film did, some decent bit of business, then Hollywood would take it and they'd remake it and they'd up the budget by 50 million and have people open the door going, "You're fucking in here all the time you're in here, the fucking matches, in here, the fucking matches. You're fucking doing the fucking fucking. You don't talk to me that way, you don't talk to me that way. You fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife. I am your wife. Die, you fucking matches I can't get on. I ain't gonna drive around town and put babies on spikes."
The sinking. How accurate is the sinking? The short answer is not very. Everyone who's upper class and white takes death on the chin if they can't get on a lifeboat, and sits in the lounge singing "Nearer My God to Thee." I know you're trying to play up a noble moment to make people cry, but this is just not what happened. The poor pacing would have you believe they waited a full 5 minutes before closing the watertight doors when the iceberg struck. The biggest inaccuracy comes between scenes in the first-class lounge, when showing the evacuation and the growing chaos outside. There is this instance when a few unnamed black characters fight their way onto the deck and try to get on a boat. And by fighting, I mean literally try to fight everyone else off the boat until an officer comes by and shoots them both, and they fall into the sea. What narrative purpose does that serve? None that doesn't involve implying immoral non-white people tried to save themselves. Remember, there were a lot of people on the Titanic who weren't white. As far as we know, only the LaRoche family were Afro-Caribbean, while a lot of third-class passengers were either Syrian or Chinese, and Masabumi Hosono had his life ruined because he survived. The film perpetuates a malefic belief that justified people's prejudice towards the non-white survivors. I don't care if it was 1929, this was still a horrible and unnecessary thing to do. I'm surprised the Nazis didn't put it in their version. The film ends with the lounge flooding and all the good white posh Christians are praying. On stage, I guess someone would say that the room is literally about to flood, and then that's how the movie ends and everyone gets out and does the bows. I don't really care. I'm glad no one remembers this movie. It can be hard to sit through a bad film, but at least there are some elements that make you keep watching, like a really bad performance, or you're just thinking, oh my god, how are the characters this stupid? Just like, Alan, how are you this stupid that you keep digging your claws into things and wondering why you get stuck? He's got some very sharp claws. We're taking him to the vet in a couple of weeks to get them cut down. He used to let me do them, but then he started getting all pissy and started biting me every time I tried to cut his nails. So now I'm going to let a vet get bitten instead. And he's so clingy today. I filmed 4 different segments in different costumes, and this is the only one I'm naturally letting him sit on, because the others just weren't designed for his gigantic claws. I am not letting you tear up my prom dress. But boring has a much shorter shelf life. It's not as intolerable as the animated movies, which were just unremorseful or remorseless in disgracing the memories of the people who died. But the insomnia cure that this movie has isn't that much better. I guess you could say it's symbolic of the time it was released, because remember, it's 1929. This came out in November of 1929, and it's only been a few weeks since the Wall Street crash. And the Great Depression is looming. The image of a great ship carrying the most famous and the richest people in the world going down and taking a lot of those rich people with it is very symbolic of the time. And of course that's going to stick in a lot of audiences' minds at the time. It's also another reason why I bet Gone with the Wind was so popular when it came out about 10 years later, because you got all that imagery of war and losing your loved ones, and you know, there's Europe going into another war and America's like, oh god, we don't want to do that. Yeah, but that parallel, which was obviously very unintentional, is the only thing that this movie has going for it. Anyway, let's hope our next Titanic movie will be a bit more amusing. And here is your teaser image for the next one. I'm hoping to do like another 4 videos at once and then continue onward. So I'll do 4 and then another 4 and then another 4 and then 5. And then instead of like a big conclusion video, I'm thinking just do a Titanic Hunger Games like I was planning to do on my birthday, but scheduling just got in the way. Well, basically I'm just going to take all of the fictional characters in these Titanic media and then I'm just going to put them in the Hunger Games simulator and see what happens. I've played with it a few times. The last couple times the winners have been very strange. Yeah, but this is currently the listing of what's happening at the moment with the Titanic rankings. And so we've got 17, we've done 4, so we've got 13 left to go. I really don't know what I'm going to say about this next one. Hopefully I'll find my words by the time it comes out. If you want to help support the channel, don't forget that I do have a Patreon, and I'd be very grateful if you signed up. You can support it. There's a link in the description. You can sign up for scripts, early videos, and getting your name in the credits. And for the highest level patrons, my King and Queen patrons, you'll be getting a shout out like Anastasia Gracia, Alison Cuff, Larissa, Leslie Williams, and Lady Eternal. And also do remember subscribe so you keep getting notifications as we get further and further up the list towards number 1. This is going to be interesting. Oh god, I really don't want to watch this next one. But I have to. It was really, really bad the first time I saw it. Okay.